meet again at last. The circle is now complete.
What's the world coming to?
Well, you got a problem with what I did, Anthony?
No. Hey, no.
Fucking rat anyways. Whole family's all rats. Would have grew up to be a rat.
Stupid bastard. I can't fucking believe it.
Gee, I'm real sorry your mom blew up, Ricky.
Now you're gonna dig the fucking thing. You're gonna dig the hole. You're gonna do it. I got no fucking line. You're gonna do it.
Yes, I'll take the fucking hole. I don't give a fuck.
I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was pure and simply evil.
Jesus Christ. Mister, you okay in there?
Put some Vindra coffees around here someplace.
Have you any idea what the cost of your actions is? What their effect might be? Or you to give them hope? What do you give them? We give them happiness. And they give us authority. Groovy.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cinephellas Podcast. It's September 7th, 2017. This is Chris coming to you live from the library on behalf of Cinephellas.com, the only place for all your cinephilic needs. Alright, so today's episode is a little free. Usually there's an element of review at the beginning of the podcast after we sort of do the copy or the sketch up top, but today we're ripping the veil off. Today we've been asked to not really have any type of review element, and this request comes directly from the press agency. Partly because today's interview is with director Brian O'Malley about the film The Lodgers. Now, it's going to be premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival this week. And so we don't want to give too much away. We want to be exciting. We want it to be a fresh experience for anyone who's going out. And then we've been asked to sort of post something a little bit more formal, maybe just a blurb, again, not a review, when the film hits theatrical release in the next 2 weeks. So up front, before I talk a little bit about my interview with Brian O'Malley, let's talk about love. Now, I know, you're thinking, is he going to get all touchy-feely on the subject? No, not really, but I do think that this is an important discussion. So, after my last relationship completely exploded last November, I was of the mindset that I absolutely would never, under any circumstance, even let myself entertain the idea of love again. But I think I found myself in a very, very strange situation. Now here, I want to quote one of our old friends. This is one of my favorite Bob Dylan quotes. It's from a song called Brownsville Girl from 1986. He says, "Now, I've always been the kind of person that doesn't like to trespass, but sometimes you just find yourself over the line." And yes, I said trespass, it just sounded like trespass. I don't know why, maybe it's a certain inflection. Maybe I'm thinking of Crispix cereal. I can't quite be sure. But I do think that that quote is brilliant in the sense that sometimes, we do find ourselves over the line or sort of embroiled in a certain situation without even realizing how we got there. So about 4 years ago, right around the time when I started dating the woman who I was engaged to, who I broke up with last November, to whom I was engaged, and we broke up last November. Around that same time, I was working at Rutgers University, and I was doing a conference. Just logistics. I wasn't presenting at the conference. I wasn't organizing really in any way. Just sort of running logistics, tech. There was a projector, so I had the awesome responsibility of making sure that nothing went wrong with the projector. And of course, ultimately it did, as things do. You can never rely on tech 100%, right? All my IT people out there, you know. So I'm sitting there, and the professor that was organizing the conference had a student that she was working with. And this student she came in, and we worked together a little bit. Instantly, I was attracted to her. I remember the first day I saw her, I was like, this is one of the most beautiful human beings I've ever seen in my life, and I instantly felt some kind of connection. However, just because I started, dating my ex at the time, and also because we were in a working environment, really, we had a few moments of friendly banter, and that was about it. She went on her way to pursue a PhD. I'm not going to name a school. She went on her way to pursue a PhD, and about that time I was as well. Long story short, as you guys know, I ended up in LA. Now, in early June of this year, so at this point 3 months ago, I went to San Francisco for a week. That's where I interviewed, I did several interviews there. My favorite interview that I did in San Francisco was Blake Freeman. So you might remember that. It might be your favorite thing in the world. I'm not sure. Maybe you hate it. Could be. Anyway, so I was talking to Blake about his film, It's All About the Money, co-starring Eddie Griffin. And later that day, I decided to look up this woman that I had met 4 years earlier, because she was in the area. That's the school that she's going to, is in the San Francisco area. So I decided to look her up, and we made tentative plans, and long story short, it fell through. We suggested that, when we crossed paths in early December on the East Coast, because we both knew we'd be visiting family in early September, we suggested that when we crossed paths, we would try to meet up at that point. Well, September was pretty far away, and I should mention at the time she was out of the country doing research, and she was in a pretty lonely place, and I was happy because we started talking every day, and I felt like maybe I could be something that was she could look forward to in an otherwise lonely situation. So I started talking every day. First it was on Facebook Messenger, then we started talking more and more, sometimes speaking, having these conversations, textual conversations for hours at a time. And it got pretty intimate. I found myself really opening up about a lot of things in my life that not only hadn't I told many people about this, but in my previous relationship, I never really felt like I could completely be myself and reveal my past. So it was really refreshing that while this woman was out of the country, we could be talking, and it was free, right? Because we were hidden behind screens. At that point, when it became real that we had a pretty intimate connection, we suggested that we should meet in early September. So we made plans to do that, and I felt really excited. I felt, I don't know, it was kind of interesting. I mean, obviously I was very attracted to her, and I was hoping maybe something would happen on that front. But really, I was just excited to be face-to-face with someone that I respected so much and was so interested in. And last week, we finally hung out. We went to another university on the East Coast, again, won't name it. And it was pretty amazing. Pretty romantic, at least I thought, but that's me. I'm just more of a romantic at heart. Oh, I know, that's cute, right? So we hung out, it was raining, the whole deal, and long story short, we had our first kiss. And ever since then, my mind's been spinning. I kind of really don't know what to do with myself. I've been really creative. She inspired me to write a lot more. I've been writing, I've been photography is another passion of mine, so I've been just trying to find different ways to look at the world. Like, she's given me this incredible sense of inspiration, and I'm so thrilled about that, and I'm really excited about it. Now here's the rub. So she's here for, I don't know, maybe another week or so, and my life is up in the air as always, looking for more secure things, more secure directions, as we all are in some way or another. So she's going back to the San Francisco area, and I am probably going to be leaving Los Angeles for a while. Not sure how long, pursuing other opportunities such as fellowships in New York and in London as well. So if something comes of that, I of course will no longer be living 5 hours south of her. I will be living potentially on the other side of the country or across the Atlantic Ocean. And if that wasn't complicated enough, after that, so in about another 6 months to a year, she's going back to her international base to do even more research. Well, this presents a lot of complications. Not only am I raw and not quite healed from my last relationship, it's also just the threat of having any kind of long-distance relationship is pretty terrifying. And I've done something very similar, granted for a shorter amount of time, maybe just a few months. But it was never over international waters, and it was never something that could potentially, if we were to really try to do this long-distance thing, it would be maybe 2 years. And granted, mobility is a thing. We can go back and forth. We can see each other. But really, I'm not quite sure what to do with myself. What would you guys do? Have you ever been in a long-distance relationship like that? Do you think it's worth it? I mean, the romantic side of me says yes, it's worth it, because if you feel that deep connection with someone, you can't give that up for anything in the world. But my experiences, I don't know, maybe this is just my age talking, but my experiences suggest that I am just too exhausted to participate in such a big, dramatic, international love affair such as that. But why is it, though, that I can't stop thinking about her? Why is it that I feel compelled to always share little things with her? Like, here's an example, okay? It's going to seem really insane, but 2 days ago, remember how I mentioned I was trying to look differently at the world? And so the other day I was hiking and I found these brilliant mushrooms, all different types of mushrooms. And I started staring at them, the color patterns, the textures, the way the sun was hitting them, their location under a tree. I started looking at all these elements and felt really inspired. So I photographed them in various ways, tried to catch them from underneath, the side, on top, all these different directions. And then later that day, I was super excited to share that with her. And at first I thought, she would be like, oh, that's cute, and she would enjoy talking about it just because she enjoys me. But then she started telling me about how she's read multiple books on mycology and the anthropology of mushrooms, and this one particular book called How Plants Think. And that moment was so interesting to me, right? Because it was, how often do you get a chance in life to completely geek out over something so minute, but also brilliant, right? Also, because it's really not about what you're passionate about. It's really about the things, or the passion itself, right? And she brings a different kind of passion out of me that I've never quite felt before. So where's it going? Don't know. Could completely implode. Could turn into the biggest mess in the history of time. I think I'm supposed to see her on the weekend. So today is today's Thursday. So in about 2 or 3 days, hopefully by the next edition of this podcast, we will have an update on that. So I appreciate you taking some time, indulging me, listening to my problems. I know, I have many problems. I'm that guy. But hey, thank you for taking the time. Now, enough with that. Let's talk about our good friend, Brian O'Malley. So, among other things, Brian is a director. He's from Ireland, and so I was excited to talk to him about, similarly as I did with Brendan Muldowney, I talked to Brian about the Irish Film Board, and he talked to me a little bit about his experiences getting this film made, The Lodgers, and how it was different than other films he worked on. So his previous work includes films such as Let Us Pray, Crossing Salween, and in those films he was contributing to the writing process as well. The Lodgers is his first exclusively directorial project. There were also a lot of interesting references to Edgar Allan Poe which I think you're going to find really interesting in the film. And I asked him if that was something I made up in my mind, or if that was, a really big kind of symbolic influence to his stylistic approach. And, this movie, I have to say, there's this taboo subject of incest that's explored through several generations of a particular family. And I found that really fascinating, because how often do you get to explore such a taboo issue in a really gothic, romantic type of way? And I don't mean romantic in the sense of sexual. I mean romantic in the sense of trying to find the beauty in something that is inherently disturbing and dark. So I asked Brian how that subject matter influenced his directorial approach, and I also asked him about working with Charlotte Vega. So Charlotte is an up-and-coming performer, and I thought she was phenomenal in this film. The range of emotions that she goes through, it had me in from the first moment. I mean, the film revolves around her desire to escape her past, her family life, and the sins of those that came before her. And so she kind of oscillates between this heroine, this very heroic figure, and this victimized figure. And it's really interesting when I asked Brian about that, what he had to say. I don't want to give too much away on that front because it was so fascinating, but he talked about seeing Charlotte's character Rachel as a symbol for what Ireland was going through politically, socially, and culturally during the 19th century and early 20th century. Alright, so I hope you haven't been too taxed by my story and you're excited to check out my interview with Brian O'Malley. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, this is Chris.
Hi, Chris. It's Erica.
Hey, Erica. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am good, thank you.
Cool. Well, I have Brian O'Malley on the line.
Okay, great. Put him through whenever you're set.
Cool. And we have 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, Brian, you're on with Chris.
Hi, how are you, Chris?
Hey, Brian. How's it going?
Yeah, very good, very good.
Good. Okay, cool. So I wanted to start out by just asking you a little bit about your process because, in America, audiences might not be familiar with the Irish Film Board and how a film gets made. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience in making or getting The Lodgers made.
Yeah, well, in Ireland, the way it works, we're quite fortunate that we have a film board which is funded by the state through taxpayers. So, we're quite privileged in that regard. And the way it works is a writer has an idea for a film. They tend to get a producer attached and they submit the idea to the Irish Film Board. If the Irish Film Board likes the idea, they then release some development funding to cover the cost of the writer writing the script and the producers helping him develop the script. And you go through that process and once the script is deemed to be ready, which can take some time, you're then in a position to go into pre-production and apply for production finance. And production finance, depending on your budget, if it's under €2.5 million, you can receive up to €650,000. And if it goes above 2.5 million, you can receive up to €750,000. So you can imagine for low budget films that are being made around the €1 to €1.5 million mark. If you can get €650,000 from the Irish Film Board, you're halfway there. So it's an amazing setup we have here, and we're very lucky to have it. And I've benefited from that now on two films, The Let Us Pray and The Lodgers. So with The Lodgers, I wasn't attached until the script had already been developed by the writer and the producers. It was gone through a number of drafts. And it was already in excellent shape when I came on board. So really myself and the writer then just spent maybe the next 6 or 8 months just doing some tweaks while the producers were trying to gather together finance. But the tweaks were never big, and they mostly related to finding a climax to the movie that was both original but also achievable on a budget. And I think we got there in the end. I think what we did is interesting. I don't think you see it coming. And we managed to do it relatively inexpensively. So that development period proved absolutely invaluable for the lawyers, because had we not had it and we set out to make the film with the ending that was on it when I came on board, it wouldn't have been quite as satisfying, and it would have been extremely expensive. So it's a better film for us.
Mm-hmm. So that process where you're talking about your input, was that mainly with the script or sort of after, while you were making the film?
No, the input would have been while we were making the script, or while at script stage. Minor stuff, character development, the odd bit of dialogue, and then just making sure that the beats are working throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
But during that process, I was also storyboarding the film, and I storyboard every scene in the movie, which I did with Larry's Play and the Lodgers. So I ended up with like 350 pages of storyboard. I would storyboard every scene, even if it's dialogue. And when I do that, I find I can identify some issues in it that would have manifested on the day on the shoot, and I kind of head them off the path. Particularly in relation to anything that's action oriented, you kind of get a sense of what may or may not work, and then talk to your writer and find a way to adjust the script. Mm-hmm. So that it is going to work when you're on the day. Because if you're working on a modest budget, you have to hit the ground with running, and you don't want to be stood on the set wondering how to shoot a scene. It's best in advance to know exactly what the pitfalls might be, so you can just get it done and move on. Mm-hmm. So that in some ways influenced the script. Practical issues that we needed to resolve, but none of them affected the essence of the script or the characters in any way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and speaking of that stylistic approach, I detected a few, or what I saw as references to Edgar Allan Poe, and I was wondering if maybe is that just in my imagination, or was he influential in your approach to your visual approach to the film?
Yeah, the Edgar Allan Poe references, because the poem she says at the lake is Poe,
mm-hmm.
Came from the writer. They didn't come from me. So in terms of my input into it, they weren't there, but they were certainly there with the writer, who's very well versed in all things Gothic literature, because he's a doctor of Gothic English literature. So it said that those references are there. But they came solely from David.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And interesting, because it's also, the film takes some risks in that it deals with an often taboo subject of these overtones of incest. And I was wondering how that subject matter influenced your approach, your directorial approach, if at all.
Yeah, well, I suppose firstly that was one of the things that drew me to it, actually, because don't get these Gothic period ghost stories that often. So the most memorable ones in recent time have been The Others and The Orphanage. Although The Orphanage actually isn't even period, but it's set in an old house, so it kind of leaves the impression that it is, even though it's modern. Mm-hmm. But so you kind of, and then you take The Innocents down from 1966, which is an older film, which is also set in a house with a very strange, boring girl, and you don't want to just be kind of repeating what all these films have done. So I felt that those undertones of incest in it were what made it feel very different and much more modern take than a ghost story. So that really drew me to it. And how it affected me as a director, I would say it didn't really at all, other than I was conscious in advance that it could be challenging for the cast. But we got very lucky that when we cast Bill Milner and Charlotte Vega as the brother and sister, they very, very quickly became like fantastic friends. So by the time we were shooting, they were just the best of buddies on the film. So really anything we could do that might be difficult or feel awkward for them really wasn't. And in fact, in between takes, they were having a laugh. So it made that process very easy to shoot, actually, which is a relief, because they're the kind of, funnily enough, when you're making a film and you've got a all the challenges of production, they're the things that can make it quite difficult when the cast are uncomfortable, and I was very lucky that they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to ask you about working with Charlotte, because that, as you're saying, on one level, it's just very sensitive topic matter, but her performance throughout the film, she has to just really dig in deep to this range of emotions. And, as a director, I was wondering if you had, in your mind, a specific approach in sort of working with her to draw the depth of all those emotions out.
Yeah, it's funny because Charlotte kind of walked into the audition room on the money. She got it right. She walked in and every scene she did, she absolutely nailed it. So she kind of came to the table almost fully formed, which is really quite amazing. So on the day of the shoot, we were able to shoot very, very quickly. But myself and Charlotte would talk all the time in between camera setups, etc. And I'd give her my thoughts, on a scene of why I thought the character was behaving in a particular way. And often we'd be thinking exactly the same way. And then sometimes she would have a thought that I might not have necessarily imagined, and let her do her thing, and she proved to be right. Because I find that actors, they tend to have, their instincts tend to always be right, almost always be right. And I like to let actors do their thing, at least in the first couple of takes, because that can be the most surprising performance. I suppose an example of a moment in the film where we discussed why the character was behaving in a certain way was there's a scene when she meets Sean in the forest, and she quite flippantly tells him she show him where they died, and it's kind of like the way she says it sounds as though she's going to show him something really pleasant, but what she's going to show him is something quite horrible. And that there was a question as to why she would behave in that manner. And the way I always saw it was because she hadn't experienced society outside of her house, she didn't really understand how to behave in company. And she didn't really recognise that was quite an odd thing to say to someone you didn't know. So that's just a little example of directing cast and kind of giving her thoughts that helps them get their head around why they're behaving in a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that scene in the woods when Rachel shows John the grave is pivotal in that you find, it kind of gave me chills because you do recognize that this is a person who has a very different way of interacting in the world.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, she has no life experience really, even though she's obviously well read, but she doesn't really have any practical life experience. So when she goes into the village, her natural defence is to be cold and distant and treat people in a manner that makes them feel like she's a snob or she's an unpleasant person. But actually, it's really just a defence mechanism because she's terrified of what they may do to her. And she understands that she doesn't, that she has no real understanding of how their world works.
Mm-hmm. Right, and she's such an interesting character because she oscillates between being a victim of the demons around her and then at the same time being a heroine that's trying to liberate herself. So in your perspective, is she a victim, is she a heroine, or is she just some kind of combination of both?
I tell you what, for me, she represents a historical background. She's set in 1920 in Ireland, and in Ireland at that time, we were on the verge of liberating ourselves from rule by the British. So Ireland was kind of, in many ways, bound by the past, but about to discover its new future, and of course it had no idea what that was going to be, and she in many ways represents that. So I definitely see her as a heroine. And I suppose in some ways you could say that she does to a degree use Sean to her own end. So she's not entirely, there is a bit of light and shade there. So certainly you're the heroine, yeah, but I suppose she isn't a heroine for anyone else but herself, I think. no choice because nobody really understands what she wants to do in Edward and Edward. As the film progresses, she kind of loses him. So by the end of the film, she really just has to do what's right for her. So she feels very modern, I think. And I felt Charlotte's performance brought a very nice on character, and that again is something that drew me to the film. That it was a period film, but had a very modern character in it, dealing with some very sex. So we only really see more of it.
Yeah, I definitely got that feeling too. It seemed very contemporary and relatable, despite being set in a sort of distant time period.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a central question that kind of goes...
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go on, yeah.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that I think a quality of that kind of juxtaposition is this, it magnifies this question that runs through the film of whether or not we can escape the sins of our family and the sins of ourselves. And I was just interested to hear your perspective on that. From a philosophical point of view, do you think it's ever possible to escape the past?
Yeah, well, I think, that's fascinating because in Ireland is a predominantly Catholic country, and actually, they say that the Ireland Exchange ruled by the British are being ruled by the Church, and I think it's a country suffered a great deal over the last 100 years due to what it has perceived as obligations to how, to the Church, how it's supposed to pay the morals that it basically has been handed by the Church and takes on board as their own. And only now we kind of realise that those morals were actually and we should follow our own path. And I kind of see her in that way too, that this has been imposed on her, the expectations of what she's doing now that she's turned 18 have just been imposed upon her. She's had no say in them. And for generations we get the idea before, her ancestors have done the same, and she's the first to say, well, no, that's not for me, I'm going to follow a different path. And I feel that that's very modern. I feel Ireland has only very recently come to this stage where people are willing to go, well, the Catholic Church isn't for my views, and I don't think myself as the Irish Catholic of the 20th century. I think the 21st century for Ireland will be a very interesting period, and I'd like to think that it'll be a period of enlightenment for many if it comes to morals and religious guidance, etc.
We're just about out of time.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and just in closing, Brian, I just want to say I really love the film, and I think all these little nuances that you're pointing to are something that is going to make me, and I'm sure a lot of other people, want to watch it a few times to kind of get all of the levels of meaning. It
would be great. I hope they do watch it. It's funny, when I'm making a movie, I'm always conscious what people think the second time they watch it. I think it's really important. So I hope they do watch it a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be terrific.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to have a chat today.
Thank you. Yeah, they were great questions. Thanks very much.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And hopefully I'll talk to you sometime soon.
Thank you.
All right, have a good day.
Yeah, thanks, man. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Erica.
Bye. Talk to you later.
We met back east where the ivy grows. You were the stranger in town. I was the one the department chose, and I got all the numbers down. Together we tried to conquer apathy. We were armed only with books.
All right, so what'd you think? I think you're really going to like this film a lot, and Brian was not kidding when he said that you should see it multiple times to get the layers of meaning. So where can you see it? Well, as I mentioned in the opening, The Lodgers is going to be having its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8th, 2017 at 7:15 p.m., so that's tomorrow. It opens to the public opens to the public on September 9th at 4:15 p.m. And then there'll be additional screenings at 9:30 p.m. on September 14th at 1:30 p.m. And then September 15th at 3 p.m. It stars Charlotte Vega, as I said. She's excellent. I think you're going to get a lot out of that story that she's trying to tell and her struggle. And I hope it's going to give you just an appreciation for the darkness that consumes us in life. Because whether it's love, whether it's sin, whether it's the hardships that we go through to escape our pasts, there's a little bit of positivity in that pain, and really it's just up to us to find it. So on that note, this is Chris reminding you to share a movie with someone you love, and I will see you next time.
At the bar that we called an altar, it was a long way from the beach cafe out there in Malibu. It was a long way from that beach cafe out there in Malibu, out there in Malibu, out there in Malibu.